Today's Evening First Alert weather show is brought to you by Bresky Siding.
And good Monday evening, Mid-Michigan. Chief Meteorologist Chris Eastlick with your Monday forecast update. And we are talking a winter storm watch for some of our northern counties as we go into Tuesday night and Wednesday, as is typically the case with winter storm watches. These will be upgraded to either advisories or warnings. They will not stay in place as is. I would imagine that if we're going to get a decision on that, it is going to come at some point for tomorrow, whether it's the morning or whether it's the afternoon. I would say the afternoon is probably a better chance, especially because it's such a temperature sensitive event. When we're talking about the difference between sleet, snow, and freezing rain, and then some areas getting rain, typically we like to assess the atmosphere as long as possible before we actually get to that point. And the fact that this winter storm watch is not only for the potential of icing up to about 1/4 of an inch, up to meaning not everybody's going to get that amount, but that would be more of the extreme scenario, or snow and sleet up to about 2 inches in accumulation. So all the possibilities seem to be there. I would say the icing is a little bit more favorable. I think the sleet and snow threat, at least a more consistent threat, is going to be a little bit further to the north in the state of Michigan. I think it's going to be more of a snow threat as you get closer to the bridge and perhaps the upper peninsula. And so for us, I think this is going to be a warmer system that's going to be more liquid than anything. But the key is not necessarily what is coming down, but it's what is going to be at the surface when that precipitation comes down. And so that's why we have that threat for freezing rain. And again, that could be in some of these areas up to about 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch, which is a little bit more impactful than just a light glaze. That's not to diminish a light glaze, but this is where we're starting to talk a little bit more about the potential for not only slippery roads, but once we start getting up around 1/10 of an inch and even more so towards 1/4 of an inch, that's when we're talking about ice bringing down some tree branches, power lines, those types of things. But this should not be expected to be a major ice storm like we've seen to the south of us this year. This is not expected to be to the level of an ice storm that we saw in Michigan last year. This is going to be a nuisance if wherever it does end up getting up to about 1/10 of an inch or more, but this is not going to be something that we expect to be crippling, if that makes sense. So here's a look at the winter storm severity index. We'll take the wider view first. What this does is it just kind of assesses what is the risk level for the impacts from a winter storm. And so I'm going to pull up the key here. But anywhere that it says the moderate risk, which is these areas that are shaded in orange, the moderate areas, and this has changed a little bit since our early evening newscast as new data has come in, so that would actually be a little bit more of a positive sign for us here in mid-Michigan. But what it indicates is the areas that are listed in moderate are going to be areas that have a better chance for not only slow road conditions, but the potential for closures or disruptions to things like power. It's kind of a look at everything type of algorithm and then put everything in one bowl. So power outages, road conditions, when it comes to snow, it would be blowing snow, it would be drifting snow, all of those types of things. But this actually looks a little bit better than it did earlier. It seems like this is pushing some of that a little bit further to the north. I'm going to try one thing here and just see if maybe the timing, now that we're technically going into a different day, I'm just going to see if this changes anything. If this may be day 2, because the Weather Service sometimes deals in what we call UTC time, which actually goes to the next day around 7 or 8 o'clock our time, depending on the time of year. So I'm just seeing if that changes anything. And maybe it's looking ahead. Yes, it did. So here's the better image. This is going to give us a better idea. So this is for Tuesday night and Wednesday. This will provide us, that did exactly what I was expecting it to do. So here is a better outlook as this loads. It'll take a second for that to pop back up, but we'll give it some time. There we go. So this is actually for Wednesday. What it was doing was pushing into Thursday. And so this gives us a really good look at some trouble areas like Iosco, Roscommon, even into Iosco County. And that's why these areas are under a winter storm watch. The main area seems to be centered around Grayling and to the north. Some of it could be in Alpena as well, but just the fact that some of this is extending down into portions of Iosco, Ogama, Roscommon County, and now even into Aranac County is why we've gone a little bit more broad with our expectations as far as what we can expect when it comes to icing. Is we have allowed these northern counties right here, and we have extended part of it down into Aranac County. Now, do I think Aranac County is going to get the worst? I do not. But I think with any small shift or any small shift in temperature change, I think it's a little bit more reasonable to go a bit more broad with these zones for now, a couple of days ahead of time, and then tighten them up a little bit more tomorrow as we start getting closer to the event. We start to have more specifics when it comes to temperatures. And so don't be surprised if we're able to kind of thin some of these zones out for tomorrow. For instance, I did have somebody ask on my Facebook page, you know, Mount Pleasant looks like it's going to be too warm for that. And it very well may be. But I think Mount Pleasant is close enough to the edge where we're at least including it in the brief glaze possible before things start to warm up. An emphasis on the word brief. These areas, if they do see freezing rain, and there's no guarantee this light pink area does, or at least everybody in that light pink area does, but we think it's at least possible that some of these regions could get a brief glaze. We think generally south of M46, which is sort of right here, we think all of these areas are pretty much rain. We don't expect a lot of risk for freezing rain south of Saginaw down to Owasso, Flint, and Lapeer. We don't really expect much in Gratiot County either. And I'll show you a graphic that kind of shows how close things could be to the border. And I'm going to pull this up on our browser computer here. And what this graphic is it's an ensemble, which just means it's a combination of all of our high resolution models. And what it looks at is it looks at all of those models together and gives us the most reasonable outcome. What is the most likely outcome? So this area here that you see my mouse, I'm circling it right here. This red indicates areas of, if we go to the bottom here, areas of freezing rain. And this is for midnight on Wednesday. Notice how close this is to Mount Pleasant. This is at midnight on Wednesday. And so if we go forward in time, Mount Pleasant is already turning green. And if we go another hour ahead, Mount Pleasant is still green, but it's still so very close. And there's that lineup from northwest to southeast right through mid-Michigan. And if I go back to our map through Huron County, northern Tuscola, and part of Sanilac, it pretty much looks the same. And so that's how I came up with this map. Is it seemed like some of these areas like Mount Pleasant were close enough to the border that it could be briefly in the freezing rain, but we do expect the pink area to have much less of an impact on the roads and on things like power lines and all those types of things. So we are not expecting places like Saginaw, Caro, any of those regions, unless there is a big shift to the south. We don't expect a lot of these areas to have to deal with anything that's worse than maybe a brief period of slippery roads before things warm up. That's kind of where things stand. So let me take a look at the comments really quick and then we'll get to the hour by hour. But I wanted to give you a quick summary first of what we're kind of looking at. And we're going to skip right ahead to midnight on Wednesday as all this is coming in. So let me just catch up on the comments. Stacy, hope the ice accumulation doesn't get too bad for Ogama and anywhere else. The one bright side, Stacy, is I think it'll warm up fast enough to where I don't expect this to be a prolonged threat. I think we'll have a better look at this tomorrow. We'll have another stream tomorrow. Let's see, Linda says, glad I found the live stream on Facebook. It used to be so easy, but now it takes forever. Linda, try it again if you've been watching on the website or on Roku or something. We had some technical difficulties last week, so try again if that's your preferred method. Alicia, this will pass. Saginaw has mostly rain. Keep in mind, even though it might warm up quite a bit, the morning is what we're concerned about. Nick, yeah, I'm not worried about Shiawassee County. David, Bay City's on the border, but I think Bay City's in that zone where if we see anything, it'll just be a quick glaze and should melt off pretty quickly. Same thing, Sue, for Midland. I don't expect Midland to have too much to worry about. If it happens in Midland, it's going to not be around too long, at least the way it stands right now. So here's midnight going into Wednesday. Here's 1:30 going into Wednesday. And let me turn the temperature sensors on just a little bit sooner. They weren't really doing well with Tuesday's temperature, so I turned them off, but I've got to extend it back towards midnight. So there we go. This is a little bit better. Oh, 1 second. Got to pull my graphics back up. One moment. Beauty of a live stream, right? I would say the primary concern is for anybody that's mainly along M55 and to the north. I think those are the areas that have that best chance. But here's the hour by hour with temperatures this time. So around 11 o'clock, everybody's around freezing or a little bit below. But if we fast forward, already by 1:30, a lot of these areas like Flint, a lot of these areas like Owasso, you're above freezing already. Even Saginaw starting to move in the right direction. By 4:30, you're 33 in Midland, 34 in Bay City, 35, 36, now into the 40s to the south. Our counties up north, still at that freezing mark or a little bit below. By 8 o'clock, you're starting to see Gladwin and Standish warm up. West Branch, East Tawas, Houghton Lake, and Oscoda still pretty borderline. And then by 11 o'clock, we're already starting to come up above freezing in some of those areas. And then once we get to the afternoon, it's over, and we'll start to get road treatments and things like that working, and we should be able to clear things out pretty well. I think these temperatures around the Tri-Cities region with this model right here are probably a little bit too chilly. I think these areas could get up into the 50s. I think some of these areas could be pushing 60 by the time Wednesday comes to an end. So I think the temperatures in this model are a little bit too slow. And let me see if I can pull up something that might be a little bit more representative. Give me one moment to put that up, and I'll guide you through when those temperatures are. So this is midnight, and I'll zoom in a little bit more. Oh, it's not letting me zoom in much. That's about all we're going to be able to do. But this is midnight. This is 1, 2, 3. So already in this projection right here, Mount Pleasant up to about 38 by 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So already by 9 o'clock, some of those northern areas like Houghton Lake, West Branch, and also into Oscoda starting to warm up even a little bit earlier than the projection I just showed you. And there's, I think, some of the warmer temperatures that could surge into the area by the afternoon. So I think this is a little bit more accurate when it comes to the temperatures. I think that hour by hour plot is just a little bit too cold. But again, notice how brief that is around the Tri-Cities region and the thumb. So that's why in this graphic right here, we've got brief glaze before possible warm-up. So if you're in Midland, Bay City, Mount Pleasant, Caro, Northern Thumb, these areas, if we do see freezing rain, it won't be for long. So it'll likely be in these areas that are a little bit more prolonged. And I would say the odds of about 1/4 of an inch of ice in some of these areas, I think most, if you get ice accumulation, it'll probably be close to more of 1/10 of an inch rather than 1/4. But consider the 1/4 kind of a worst case scenario. The 1/4 would be the kind of the top end of that range. I think 1/10 or a little bit more than 1/10 would be more realistic. But there's a chance that we could still see some shifts. You notice this text box right here, position of ice areas, still subject to change with storm movement. There's a very decent possibility that this keeps moving a little bit further to the north. And we might end up warming up even quickly enough to where some of these northern areas actually don't see much freezing rain at all, or at least enough to really cause issues. So I think if I had to make a gut feeling right now, I think winter weather advisories will eventually follow. I'm interested to see if those winter weather advisories will cap it at more of a 1/10 of an inch, and that 1/4 of an inch shifts to the north a little bit more. And then I think we'll also get some clarity on whether sleet and snow are really going to be a factor. I don't really think so. I think some of these areas could see a little bit of snow, but I think it's more liquid. And I think even sleet is probably a little bit further to the north than what this is. I think freezing rain and rain are primarily what we're looking at. So that's kind of where things stand for tonight. I think we'll be able to talk a little bit in more detail for tomorrow. Long term, your 7-day here. I think we start to cool down this weekend. We've got 30 Saturday and Sunday, and then we start to feel like February again on Monday. We are keeping tabs on Friday. Right here, there could be another system that comes through Friday. That one also looking like rain first, and then perhaps some snow as it moves out. And Veronica, I do not like ice either. Good to see you, Wendy. I don't think this is something, just in case anybody is asking, I don't think this is a widespread school closure type situation at this point. I think the northern counties that are under the winter storm watch, those would be the areas I would be most concerned about with school. For those who are further south, I think students should plan on going to school on Wednesday. But we'll see what tomorrow brings. So that's the 7-day. This is your winter storm watch. Just for a quick summary again, it is for Roscommon, Ogama, and Iosco, as well as Alcona counties. That is from 10 o'clock on Tuesday until 10 o'clock on Wednesday. And this will be changed before we get there. So expect an update on that tomorrow afternoon, I would say at the latest. Could be as soon as the morning. I doubt that. Could be a midday update, but I think because it's, again, so temperature sensitive, the difference between freezing rain and regular rain and the difference between sometimes freezing rain and sleet, I think they're going to wait as long as possible within reason before they change to anything like an ice storm warning or winter weather advisory. But I don't think this rises to the level of a winter or an ice storm warning. I think this is going to be a winter weather advisory. So we'll see what happens with that. That is going to be the end of the stream for tonight. Not getting any fresh questions or anything, but we will do this again tomorrow night at 9. And I will be happy to see all of you again. And hopefully we'll get a few more on, and we'll really take a look at where things go going into Wednesday morning. Until then, we thank you for watching, and we will see you all tomorrow.